Fox News alert ISIS now claiming responsibility for the horrific New Year shooting at an Istanbul nightclub packed with foreigners that left 39 people dead and dozens more wounded, including one American. This as the killer remains at large. This is Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith, here today, host of Kennedy on Fox Business Kennedy, Republican strategist and Fox News contributor Lisa Booth, National Review reporter Catherine Timpf, and today's hashtag One Lucky Guy, the founder of Skybridge Capital and member of the executive committee for President-elect Donald Trump's transition team. Anthony Scaramucci is here. And Anthony, you are outnumbered, sir. Good to see you.
Happy New Year, Sandra. Thanks for having me.
And Anthony, I'm not going to tell anyone you said this is your favorite show to do on Fox.
See that?
I would tell anyone you said that.
Good thing
I like how you said that close to the vest.
Sean Hannity's on vacation right now. He won't listen to that. Sean, don't pay attention to that. I say that to all the girls.
All right, lucky us, we get you today. All right, ISIS praising the shooter as one of its own. The terror group saying the Istanbul attack was carried out by a, quote, heroic soldier of the caliphate who attacked the most famous nightclub where Christians were celebrating their pagan feast. Turkey's state-run news agency saying police have detained 8 people in connection with the massacre. But the gunman who escaped after the shooting, not among them. Meantime, among the survivors, a Delaware man shot in the leg and perhaps fortunate to be alive. Turkish authorities saying the cell phone he was carrying might have prevented a bullet from piercing a major artery. Benjamin Hall joins us live from London now with the very latest. Hey, Benjamin.
Hi, Sandra. Well, Istanbul remains on highest alert tonight as the desperate manhunt to capture this man who killed 39 on New Year's Eve continues. His identity is still unknown, but police believe they may be slowly closing in. Today, the funerals of some of the dead began taking place as the identities of more victims were released. Among the 39 killed, 27 were foreign, including victims from Israel, Germany, Russia, France, India and Belgium. More details of the attack have been emerging. The gunman who fired up to 180 bullets stopped to change his magazine 5 times. He then waited for 13 minutes inside the kitchen where he changed clothes before leaving in a taxi amid all the chaos. Police are still trying to learn his identity, but what they are saying is that he might be part of the same ISIS cell which attacked the Istanbul airport back in June, killing 41. As a result, officials believe he may be from the Central Asian countries of Uzbekistan or Kyrgyzstan. And today, victims also began talking about what happened inside the club that night, including, as you mentioned, American businessman William Rock.
All I can say is it's a massive tragedy. This is very unfortunate. I don't want to talk about what happened inside the club. But, I want to say, this is a very good country, and it's so unfortunate that this is happening to you guys, and I really feel for everybody here.
Now, President Obama has also reached out to the Turkish people, offering his condolences, and he says that the U.S. stands ready to help do whatever it takes to bring this man to justice. Sandra?
All right, Benjamin, thank you. Anthony, I want to open this up to the couch. It's a horrific thing to witness.
It's just a terrible tragedy, and my heart goes out to all of the people that are involved with this one and all the other terrorist attacks. But what I will say is that we've got to put metal detectors in these areas, and unfortunately, we've got to fortify these areas with more security, Sandra. And it's something we don't want to do. Places like Turkey, the United States, we love our freedom. We don't want to block it up like that, but I really think we have to go in that direction now.
Based on your knowledge of the President-elect's plans heading into his first term, how do you think he is going to respond to attacks like this?
Well, listen, I know Mr. Trump very well, the President-elect. I know he's super upset about this stuff. I think what people don't know, that don't know him personally, is how empathetic he is and how he feels for people. You can certainly feel that in these campaign rallies. And so events like this, I think he is going to give swift, Reagan-like justice in situations like this. I also think the Department of Homeland Security, General Kelly, in coordination with the White House, you're going to see what Mr. Trump is calling the extreme vetting take place so that we can really more carefully screen people that are entering the country that may not have our interests at heart.
And ISIS claiming responsibility today for this attack, Kennedy. It has been made very clear by many who have criticized President Obama's terms in office that ISIS has grown under the current administration, and here we have to witness yet another attack.
Yeah, and they've also grown under the Erdogan administration in Turkey. And Turkey basically threw the door open for terrorists to move through that country and into Syria. And it's no surprise to see these coordinated cells in a place like Turkey because they've got the proximity. They've also got a lot of people concentrated there. And now that Turkey is so closely aligned with Russia, that, they bombed that convoy going into Aleppo, and this is just rationalization for ISIS to seek revenge on Turkey since they are, in fact, aligned with Putin.
Well, and Sandra, you asked Anthony how Donald Trump might differ, President-elect Trump might differ, and then President Obama on some of this stuff. I mean, I think outside of already tapping some strong leaders to surround him, someone like General Mattis, who has fought on the front lines in the Middle East, or even someone like General Mike Flynn, who along with General McChrystal turned JSOC into the preeminent terrorist hunting organization. I think it's even just the rhetoric. I mean, because you've already seen him sort of not be afraid to call it what it is, radical Islamic extremists. And that's something we haven't seen from President Obama. We've also seen from President Obama sort of the downplaying of the threat, whether it's saying that bathtubs are more dangerous than terrorists, or saying something, Al-Qaeda's on the run when they clearly weren't because the Benghazi attack happened, or saying that ISIS is a JV squad. So, I think even with the rhetoric as well, there's a difference, and we've already seen that, even though, he's clearly not the president yet.
And clearly expectations are high that leadership under President-elect Donald Trump, or President Trump, will be much different as far as the fight against ISIS and how it looks.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you were saying, Donald Trump is not afraid to name the problem and say what the problem is. And I think that won't just be for his administration, but that'll also be open things up to how people feel more comfortable talking about it. If you talk about something like San Bernardino, where people were saying, these people did look suspicious to me, but I didn't want to seem like a racist. Even when the shooting happened in Orlando at this nightclub, people were trying so hard to blame it on anything but radical Islamic. I saw toxic masculinity being blamed for it, and people are going to be more comfortable with someone like President Trump talking this way, to talk that way, and to see something, say something is actually a little bit more possible when you're able to say something without being concerned you're going to be, called Islamophobic.
Right. All right. Meantime, a follow-up to the latest flashpoint between the U.S. and Russia. 35 Russian diplomats and their families were expelled from the U.S. yesterday as punishment for Moscow's interference in the presidential election. This as President-elect Trump is once again appearing to downplay the hacking by saying he knows things about it that other people don't know, and that he'll reveal that information tomorrow or Wednesday. Asked about Mr. Trump's comments this morning, incoming Press Secretary Sean Spicer saying we should not jump to conclusions before the final intelligence report comes out. Watch.
The president-elect is briefed by his security team, by the current security team and intelligence community. I think he does know things. That's why he's the president-elect. He is informed of things that Americans that aren't clear to get that information know. And I think what he's trying to get at is there's a degree of certainty to which this happens. This report that everyone sees is taken as gospel truth right now is not even final. It's not supposed to be finalized until later this week. So there are questions as to why we're taking the action that we're taking in the proportion that we are without the report even being finalized.
All right, so what does the president-elect know?
Well, I got to let him tell you what he knows, but here's what I know, is that this is inexcusable stuff. If there's a foreign entity or a hacker hacking into our systems, corporate, political, or otherwise, the president-elect and his new administration take a very hard line against that. We certainly do not want that to happen. As it relates to this specific issue, I think what President-elect Trump is trying to say to people is that he's going to have a very deliberate and thoughtful analysis of things before he overreacts.
Some don't see it that way, because he was already provided information from the CIA and the FBI that said that there was evidence and proof of this hacking, but yet still the president-elect wanted to move on.
And I think you'll hear from him later in the week that it's very, very hard to prove specifically who did what.
But that appears that he is questioning our intelligence.
But not to get into the super details of this stuff, but like you could be in North Korea and you could be hacking and sending out Russian-style fingerprints to make other people think that it's the Russians that are actually hacking something. Now, someone will obviously react negatively to what I'm saying. I don't have the data, I don't have the information at my disposal, but here's what I do know, is that the president-elect, his administration, the people that are descending upon Washington January 20th, are going to take a very hard line on this stuff. They do not want foreign entities hacking our institutions or our political.
And if they are, we should know how they're doing it so we can beat it.
Absolutely, and we shouldn't just assume that it's one country or one government or one set of hackers from a certain country,
right.
Because, you know, I think we have vulnerabilities that have yet to be addressed. And, you know, President-elect Trump sort of in a rudimentary way, said that no computer is safe. And in a sense, he's absolutely right. And certainly the computers at the federal government. And, you know, there was a Washington Post headline that screamed that Russians had infiltrated Vermont's utility grid, that they had hacked inside, and that was actually false. That was not a true story. And we have to be very careful with this alarmism. We also have to be careful resetting the relationship with Russia again, because every administration tries to do it and fails. And, you know, saying that Putin has been falsely demonized, I think is very, very naive, and we have to be careful of that.
It bothers me in general on all sides of the aisle, though, how people are discussing this in such a political way. I'd say probably particularly Democrats seem to want Russia to have been involved so they can, you know, make people more afraid of Trump,
right.
When originally people on the conservative side were the ones who were more concerned about Russia and were actually mocked for being concerned about Russia. So the switching around on it, it's just so political, and we're talking about our safety. There's so many things. Everything's done by a computer.
If Russia had hacked the RNC, just very quickly, if Russia had hacked the RNC, would President Obama have issued these sanctions? If the entire situation were reversed, if Hillary Clinton had won the electoral vote, would President Obama have been pushing for these sanctions?
Based on the way they're talking about it, I don't think as much.
Well, and also to that point, Kennedy, I think that's part of the reason for a lot of people this feels political from the president and sort of an effort to box Donald Trump in politically and, you know, from a foreign policy standpoint as well with Putin, just giving the timing of it, the fact that he did sit on it when it looked like Hillary Clinton was going to win, or at least that's what everyone was saying. And you're right about the fact that we do face so many threats. We get hacked all the time. You look at the fact that Russia hacked into what was it? Hacked into, but China also hacked into OPM with 22 million social security numbers that were exposed. But, you know, Russia has hacked our military operations as well. So, I mean, these are things that we know, that these threats are constant and they're happening all the time.
So what will the president-elect...
It's not going to be boxed in, though. I'm sorry.
What will his relationship be with Vladimir Putin?
Well, listen, I think it's very early. They've had a couple of conversations, or at least one conversation that I'm aware of. I think he thinks he's very smart. I think he's a capable leader inside of Russia. And I think he wants to have a good relationship with him. And I think if you talk to Henry Kissinger about it, there's enough common interests. We may be adversaries on certain things, but there's enough common interests that we probably should start working closely together on the defeat of terrorism, on the rolling back of crimes against humanity, which I think the Russian people and the American people have in common. But Sandra, it's early. I think that the message from President-elect Trump is a very broad, disruptive, entrepreneurial message. It's like, listen, I'm going to take a look at these things, and I'm going to analyze them the way a business person would analyze them. Yes, I'm going to have some geopolitical help and some diplomats alongside of me, but at the end of the day, I'm going to be making a lot of these decisions based on my personal assessment of the situation. You have to admire him for that, because he would say, if he was sitting on this couch right now, he'd say, you know what, we've made a lot of blunders over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
So let's try something a little bit different. And by the way, it's not to say that if things are going in an adversarial way with any country, not the Russians, but just any country, he's going to take a very strong pro-American people stance
All right, well,
in that situation.
We know that he's going to be revealing much more either tomorrow or Wednesday as far as all of this is concerned, so we'll be watching it. All right, 2017 will bring a new administration and new Congress, but Washington could still be set for more of the same partisan gridlock. There's word that Democrats plan to slow down confirmations for a bunch of President-elect Trump's cabinet picks. Why? And is this being irresponsible? Plus, less than 3 weeks to go until President Obama leaves office, but he's hinting he may not exactly go riding off into the sunset. So is that what Americans want?
Happy New Year and welcome to the couch of glory. This is Outnumbered. Years of tradition may be about to go out the window for more partisan gridlock. Oh, Lord. Democrats reportedly preparing to throw up roadblocks in an attempt to slow down the confirmation process for President-elect Trump's cabinet picks. Incoming Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer telling the Washington Post, quote, President-elect Trump is attempting to fill his rigged cabinet with nominees that would break key campaign promises and have made billions off the industries they'd be tasked with regulating. If Republicans think they can quickly jam through a whole slate of nominees without a fair hearing process, they are sorely mistaken. The Post also reporting Senator Schumer targeting several nominees in particular, including Secretary of State nominee Rex Tillerson and Attorney General nominee Jeff Sessions. This could get exhausting and annoying very quickly, Anthony Scaramucci. And I think it's very important to vet the people who are coming into these powerful roles.
There's no disputing that, but I think that that's a lot of bellicosity in terms of the rhetoric. At the end of the day, these people are going to be confirmed fairly quickly, primarily because they're phenomenal Americans, Kennedy. If you look at the CVs, and I've had the opportunity to go through them as being on the executive committee, this is a world-class group of people that are about to enter the American cabinet. And so my guess is there'll be some posturing, there'll be some eggs and tomato throwing, but every one of those people up there, and especially Secretary of State designee Rex Tillerson, will get confirmed and approved.
It might make it more difficult, but it's not going to change the outcome.
Yeah, not only that, you need 51 votes now. Remember, Harry Reid switched the game plan on there. So it will happen. They just need to do the posturing for their base. I respect and understand that, and I hope it doesn't become more than that.
I still think there's some denial involved, too. It's kind of like if you ask someone to a dance and they go with someone else, you can follow her and her date around all night and make it a little more complicated for them to get along. But at the end of the night, she's still going home with that guy.
Where did you come up with that analogy? Just
she just lays in bed at night.
The couch of glory you came up with that? Or that was something you were thinking
about, yes. But personal life experience.
Well, they're both right. But to Anthony's point, I mean, I think this is a lot of noise from the Democratic Party because there really isn't much. I mean, they can try to slow down the process, I think, using some
Do we really want to wait until March to get a Secretary of State, considering how the world appears to be melting down?
No, absolutely not. But, you know, ultimately, as Anthony pointed out, because of the rules changes under Harry Reid 3 years ago, they need a simple majority as opposed to a filibuster proof, and so that they will be able to move forward any of the confirmations or any of the cabinet choices they want, unless for some reason the Democratic Party can get some Republicans to play ball, which potentially on Rex Tillerson, you know, that might be the only area I could see where maybe they pick off McCain or Graham or something like that. But otherwise, it's smooth sailing.
I would not
Senator Rand Paul.
I wouldn't underestimate his relationships on the Hill. Rex's Secretary of State designee Tillerson's.
Are we supposed to be picking up what you're laying down? Like,
yeah, I mean, this guy's going to get confirmed.
Like, you know, everyone got to put gas in their tanks? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and he's likable. And you know what? He's very, very thoughtful. And
that accent wins a lot of people over, too.
He's charming. He's likable. And he knows the world. And you know what? He's going to put America's interests first, and the Democrats and the Republicans are going to confirm
But they're putting
I suspect he'll get votes on the Democratic side. Secretary of State.
A lot of people are going to start naming their babies Rex, too.
Well, there's also 10.
Great name. Little tiny arms, too.
But there's also 10 Senate Democrats who are running in states that Donald Trump won, 5 of which Donald Trump won by double digits. So you're going to have some people that are potentially having tough elections in 2018, especially what Trump is able to do, how, you know, likable and what his favorabilities look like heading into 2018. In those states who might be willing to play ball, because they recognize the fact that, you know, they have little political capital
Well,
to use.
never mind
Like that.
2018, 2020, and 2024, when you've got perhaps an incoming Democratic administration. Payback can be very tough, I hear. There is a phrase that I'm not going to repeat.
There's a lot of secrets going on this couch today. All right, but like talking about
Couch of glory.
Couch of glory. The timing, though. So Chuck Schumer saying they want a minimum of 2 days of hearings per cabinet pick, and no more than 2 choices should face hearings in the same week. Okay, so rewind to 2009 when Chuck Schumer was completely fine and went along with the Senate unanimously confirming 7 of President Obama's cabinet picks on Inauguration Day and 5 more a week later. Did you know that?
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's the thing.
Politics.
And if this is what they're serving up, this is what they're going to have to eat when there is a
Okay, enough with the analogy. I'm not
a lot of
understanding them all.
It can be very useful.
But people are, but Sandra,
mechanism.
people are tired of it.
with words.
The American people are tired of it.
I'm hearing
So
you.
we'll see.
No, they
Get it.
are. Regardless of what party, regardless of who you voted for, it's exhausting. The politics for the sake of politics no longer of use to 95% of you. Yeah, the Democrats may be slowing things down, but the president-elect
We've lost it.
is not. A top 8 says.
Well, with less than 3 weeks until Donald Trump takes office, there are lots of questions about what we will see in those early days. Incoming Press Secretary Sean Spicer says a lot is going to change from the get-go.
It's going to be not one big thing, it's going to be many big things. On day one, he's going to sign a series of executive orders to do 2 things. One is repeal a lot of the regulations and actions that have been taken by this administration over the last 8 years that have hampered both economic growth and job creation. And then secondly, do the same on a forward-thinking thing. He's going to start implementing things. He's going to bring a new brand to Washington. He's going to institute a lobbying ban. 5 years, it's very forward-thinking. What have we had in the past is people who've looked in the rearview mirror. This time we're thinking forward. If you want to serve in a Trump administration, you're going to serve this country, not yourself.
All right, so the president-elect has voiced displeasure with a lot of President Obama's recent actions, even involving Israel and Russia. Where does he begin? What do they do first?
Well, I'll give you an example of some of the thought process. I think we're looking through all of these different regulatory agencies. We've sent landing teams into these departments, and we're basically trying to figure out which regulations are the worst ones. And so we've asked people to rank the regulations from what are making the American people safe.
What are you finding out?
What is helping?
What's up at the top?
I think what we're finding out is that let's eliminate the worst 10%. So what's at the top for me, I'll speak specifically about the financial services industry, is the Dodd-Frank legislation
Yeah, baby. You would say that.
has crushed the lending capacity for the community banks. And so if you understand the economy, where do we get our job growth and our wage growth is from the small businesses. Small businesses need a very vibrant community banking system. And so what we've done in order to make the world so safe, Sandra, is that we've stopped them from lending. And so we have to give them a little bit of room there to start lending again. So that means
Absolutely
that
right.
some community bank equity holders may lose their money, but the systemic side of the banking system will be intact. And so we need to make the world safer. That's what the government's responsibility is, but not so safe that we get no growth, no wage growth, no economic opportunity for the middle and working class.
The cost of
People love it.
compliance
So
for
that's a big one.
Dodd-Frank for these small banks so prohibitive that oftentimes they have to essentially sell themselves to these big banks who are emboldened by Dodd-Frank. Jeb Hensarling has a great piece of legislation, and I hope that through the president-elect he is encouraged to take it as far as he can, because that truly, it doesn't repeal Dodd-Frank completely, but it targets exactly what you're talking about. Those small banks, how much capital they have to have on hand, and how they have to comply with that behemoth bill we don't fully understand. It hasn't been fully implemented. It's so massive and confusing, and it is killing the economy.
One could make the argument that this conversation alone and the fact that you're even looking at the regulations like that has been boosting the stock market, the records that we have been
Absolutely.
seeing.
Yeah, exactly.
That being said, there's a lot of other focus that could possibly be on immigration, energy regulation. What do you expect the first few weeks of Trump's presidency?
Energy regulation, I think a lot of those are going to go pretty quick. He's been very open about that. I love that Rick Perry nomination to, it'd be, as a libertarian, I think it's a great idea to just nominate to people to head things that they've said should be eliminated.
Yes.
Great way to keep the government under control. But yeah, people love it,
The head of the EPA has been suing the EPA.
Yeah, exactly. The head of the EPA suing the EPA, another great pick in my opinion.
The head of HHS hates Obamacare, Betsy DeVos.
I can feel the Twitter haters coming out of the woodwork.
I would like to see Donald Trump, keeping jobs here rather than getting too involved in private businesses, as I've also seen him do, keeping regulations down and the cost of doing business here lower so that people won't want to go other places.
But the irony, too, is for President Obama, for someone who's been so concerned about his legacy throughout his presidency and has done so much in the name of legacy, whether it's trying to release prisoners from Guantanamo Bay, the withdrawal of troops from Iraq, all of these things that he has done, a lot of it's going to be eradicated and reversed because it was done, so much was done through executive fiat, whether it's the executive actions on immigration, that can all be done by incoming President-elect Trump, and that's really what he ran on, was trying to roll back a lot of what, President Obama's legacy was.
Which may be why he's thinking about, as a private citizen, speaking out more, which I think would be a mistake.
Staying in D.C. like a fifth-year senior.
Well, he's got in fairness to him, one of his children, I think, is finishing school there, so I do get
Yeah, but he's saying he's going to stick around. He's saying that.
Let's hang on to that fifth grade senior point because we're getting to that. Meantime, it appears the president may not be exiting the big stage on January 20th. Mr. Obama using his last weekly address of 2016 to signal that he won't be going quietly into the night when he vacates the White House, as he spoke on the need to stand up for America's ideals after he leaves office.
It has been the privilege of my life to serve as your president. And as I prepare to take on the even more important role of citizen, know that I will be there with you every step of the way to ensure that this country forever strives to live up to the incredible promise of our founding, that all of us are created equal and all of us deserve every chance to live out our dreams.
Well, okay, Anthony, clearly the President Obama plans on sticking around. I mean, that's very much what this seems like. There's already reports that he's huddling with Senate Democrats on Obamacare. Is this about his legacy more than anything?
Well, I think it's also, he still sees himself as one of the leaders, if not the leader of the Democratic Party, and so he's going to want to help them in 2018 as well. And I think all of that makes sense. What doesn't make sense is the notion that he's going to bring himself back into the presidential critiquing process, which his predecessor, George W. Bush, I think was a real gentleman to him. He stepped out of the process, allowed him to run the office of the presidency, and said to many people, it's a tough enough job without your predecessor in there critiquing. So I really hope he stays to that and honors that tradition. I think it's sort of sacrosanct for the presidency. And if he's worried about his legacy, which apparently he might be, that would be a better way of going about things as it relates to presidential legacy.
But Kennedy, so President Obama, the Democratic Party has seen historic losses under him, but he has said that he wants to be involved in the recruiting of future generations of candidates. Is that a good thing?
No, he's got a horrible track record. He really does. And, there's been something so wonderful about George W. Bush really retreating into his own to have...
painting?
Yeah, he's painting, he's doing, he's believing.
And he's been very respectful of President Obama.
And that's the way it should be.
Yeah.
I think that we have enough people like Chuck Schumer and like Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders holding this president accountable from the Senate floor. You don't need someone else from the sidelines. And I understand why Bill Clinton went out and crafted this foundation. It was really laying the foundation for his wife to run for president. And I really think that President Obama needs to take at least a couple years to look inward, write some books.
He's not. He's looking backwards, and he's bragging about his track record, particularly on the economy, Anthony Scaramucci. I mean, almost in that same breath, He said 8 years later, we have a completely different story. We've turned recession into recovery. Our businesses have created 15.6 million new jobs, and we put poor people back to work than all other major advanced economies combined. I mean, he's still looking back and saying...
To be fair, some of that is true, but what isn't true is there's been no wage growth. Slight uptick last quarter, but there's been no wage growth for 10 years. In fact, disposable income is down 9% for middle-class and working-class families. 8 million people have dropped below the poverty line during his administration. He has no quarter. He'll be the first president in modern history where he has no quarter where he got to 3% GDP growth in any of the quarters. There was no print at that level. So it's a mixed record. And I understand that he would say, well, we came out of a bad recession and a global financial crisis.
Which we did.
But the regulations, the Dodd-Frank issue, the lack of public offerings as a result of the tightening of the regulations, all of those things have slowed down growth and made it harder for middle-class families and working families to get ahead. And we're talking about $15 an hour for wages. We should really be trying to get to $50 an hour, not 15. And you can do that through the free market, not through governmental mandates.
Kat, what's your take on all this?
Well, I mean, President Obama, he can stick around, he can talk, he can try to influence things as much as he wants, but he has no official point of power. And there are a lot of people that are excited to hear this. He's really popular with a lot of people. A lot of people really love the Obamas. So they'll be still listening, but how much is it going to impact the way things are actually run? I'd say not at all. So if it makes people feel better, that's great. If he thinks it's a good time, that's great. But the reason that Trump was elected is because a lot of people, they're over that. And I think the people who are going to be listening to Obama are going to be the same people who will be listening anyways, and the same ones who are in denial about the future.
Well, first it was the ditch and dine. Now President-elect Trump bailing on his press corps again, this time to play golf. His team saying it won't happen again, but it's raising new questions about what his relationship with the press will look like when he's president.
Welcome back. For the second time since he was elected, the president-elect took a little side trip with no media in tow. Fun. Happened on Saturday. Mr. Trump went golfing at one of his Florida courses without notifying the press pool. And the reporters, they were none too happy. A Trump aide said it was a last-minute trip that even his staff was unaware of, and that it would not happen again. This raising new questions about what President Trump's relationship with the press will look like once he takes office. Now, over the last few weeks, his team has talked about possibly making some changes, including to the daily briefing. Some top former White House communications aides weighing in.
I think that there's always antagonism, and there's always, particularly with the president, there's no president who ever woke up in the morning and called their press secretary and said, "You're doing a great job. I love the way I'm being covered. Everything's fair, and even the criticism is helping me grow as a president." Never happened. Never happened.
We are in a new place, and I don't think it's good, and I don't think it has any parallels to the past. And I don't think Trump needs the press, but I think he wants them like an addict craves their drug.
I think there's a different trend going on, and it's two parts to it. The first is it's a double-barreled hostility. This press corps can't stand Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is happy to return the favor. And he uses it to his advantage. He can use it to his advantage because, as the Gallup poll recently indicated, confidence in the press to report the news accurately and fairly has never been lower. And so the press has made itself vulnerable because they've lost the trust of their readers and their viewers.
It is certainly a new era. So let's discuss, will the president-elect put himself on that short leash that the press is demanding of him?
Yeah, listen, he's an interesting business entrepreneur. He's not going to probably follow the rules of the past 3 or 4 presidents. Having said that, I think when he gets to Washington, someone was talking about redecorating the White House or some nonsense like that. This guy's going to work. Okay, yeah. He's going to be at work religiously on behalf of the American people, and so they'll keep the press notified and they'll do the right things from a protocol perspective. What I didn't like about that interview yesterday, and I did watch it, is the body language is absolutely horrific. If you're watching these people, they inimically dislike the guy. Okay, he's your president too.
See, I didn't get that from Nicole Wallace. I felt like she's real warm.
Yeah, exactly. Nicole, if you're listening here, you're saying Trump, Trump, Trump. He's the president-elect. Use the right language. Be respectful of the office. If you don't like him personally, and it's very obvious from listening to the interview that you don't, that's fine. But he's the president. I always say President Obama. I always say President Clinton. You should say President-elect Trump when you're addressing the president. Respect the office.
Even apart from that, the fact that she has that kind of attitude really just makes him look more sympathetic when he doesn't want to talk to the press. So they're not really doing him any favors. He should, be following the rule. If this were reversed, I'm sure that all the conservatives would be saying, oh, Obama's playing golf again.
Yeah.
But when the press goes after him the way that they do go after him, they make it so it's a little different. And it makes it a little bit easier for him to get away with something like that because it's obvious why he might not want to talk to them.
Is it going to be different, though? I mean, what do we demand of this president in terms of tradition and the press?
Well, obviously social media is going to play a part too, right? I mean, Sean Spicer, I chatted with him the moment it was announced that he would be the press secretary, and he told me, he said, that's not going away. And in fact, the White House press briefings on a daily basis might involve some sort of use of Facebook, he alluded to. So, I mean, it's not going to look traditional.
But Twitter's not problematic. I don't know. Facebook isn't problematic. The problem will be if he completely freezes out the press, because we do have to know as citizens.
Why is there an expectation he'll completely freeze the press?
Well, because he went to the 21 Club for steak. He didn't notify them.
And he went golfing.
I
got it.
But he's not.
And he's not president yet. I understand that.
Let's let January 20th take effect. He'll be in Washington working super hard, and I'm pretty confident that he's going to be as disciplined as any president that you've ever seen. And so the press will probably be unhappy with that as well, because they're looking for a fight with the president-elect. And I think they should dial it back a little and give him a chance to govern.
Well, and you also have Sean Spicer has alluded to the fact, as you guys were talking about earlier, about utilizing things like Facebook Live and Twitter to reach voters directly, or to reach people directly. But, that really shouldn't be that surprising, because that's what he did, which helped him win in both the primary and the general election, was sort of bypassing the press, not using traditional means like paid media. We all know that the Clinton campaign in our allies spent more than double than that of Trump and his. But he was able to use things like Twitter, the town halls, these Facebook Lives to reach people directly, and that's how he won. So, it's unsurprising if that's what he chooses to continue to do in the White House.
On Election Day, 3 p.m., we did a Facebook Live, Get Out the Vote live chat. 1.9 million viewers. Just want you to think about the magnitude of that.
Well, no, but that's fine. I don't have a problem with the social media. I think it's great. If people want to ask him questions directly and he wants to address them, I think that's fantastic. But you also have to have a challenge in there. You have to have people who are challenging your decisions and your beliefs and your appointments. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
But I don't think there's going to be any shortage of that, Kennedy. I mean, they're angling for a fight right now.
They are. Absolutely. There's no question about that.
Dial it back a little. Give him a chance to put his legislative agenda. Certainly you're going to challenge
They're already on him for his next press conference.
You're letting your personal hatred of the guy get the best of you. Be a little bit more dispassionate as a journalist.
Well, there is nothing but love on this couch. As a former Obama advisor says, the Clinton days are over. And the Democratic Party now moving to the left. Is he right? And what would that mean for the future of the Democratic Party? We will debate and discuss next.
A former Obama advisor basically writing the political obituary of Bill and Hillary Clinton. According to Van Jones, the Clintons are a thing of the past who no longer reflect the direction of the Democratic Party, which is moving left. Here's what he said.
The Clinton days are over. This idea that we're going to be this moderate party that's going to move in this direction, that's going to throw blacks under the bus for criminal justice reform and for prison expansion, it's going to throw workers under the bus for NAFTA. Those days are over. You can't run and hide. You've got to be an authentic person from the beginning. You're going to be judged based on your authentic commitment to the actual base of this party, and if you don't do that, you can't win.
Lisa Booth, to you first. Is he right?
Yeah, I do think the party, I do think the Clinton days are over. I don't know how they recover from this previous loss. And I also do agree with him in the sense that the party is going to the left. Just look at the leaders that they just nominated or are looking to nominate. Someone like Keith Ellison to potentially lead the DNC, who has Senator Chuck Schumer, minority leader in the Senate's endorsement. He is a radical progressive, and he's also said some very racist things as well. And you look at someone like Nancy Pelosi, even though she's seen historic losses under her watch, the fact that she's still going to be in leadership. Senator Chuck Schumer is very liberal as well. So I definitely think that the party is going further to the left, but I think that's going to be a problem electorally for them.
Does Secretary Clinton run again?
No.
She's addicted.
Is really embarrassing if she does. It's people just don't know sometimes to
run to the
Biden
hasn't rolled it out.
The hat.
Well, they're trying to run Chelsea. They're trying to prepare Chelsea to run. They don't know that nobody likes them anymore.
Though.
They can't tell. That's the thing.
She has a hard time getting.
She is just a charismatic dynamo. That Chelsea
absolutely, really.
If that's the future of the Democratic Party, I think they're in more trouble than
If the Clinton era is dead, I don't think the Clintons got the memo on that.
No.
Oh, no, I think they do. If you look at Hillary Clinton's depressed face right now, it's the most authentic she's ever been. Like her in a state of utter shock and sadness. It's tough to see, but I really feel like this is, like you're seeing the real her. She's absolutely devastated. There's no political phony baloney smile.
Really?
And that's, you're seeing a real person.
Well, I think she's going to run again.
Okay, so address the party. What's happening with it? Is it moving farther to the left?
Absolutely, it's moving farther to the left, and I think that if Hillary Clinton poses a run, she'll have enough people who are no longer a part of her establishment, who refuse to have her boot on their neck, and one of them is going to be Elizabeth Warren. She's going to set herself up for the next few years. If you want progressive, then she is.
There's also one name we haven't mentioned, and that is Bernie Sanders and his impact.
Yeah, a huge impact. People were excited about Bernie, and then they weren't excited about Hillary. And, you know, what we saw through the WikiLeaks of all the steps that the DNC took to try to stop Bernie from being too big of a threat. I feel like if you need to play dirty to ensure that your candidate will win a primary, maybe that candidate's not the best for the general, and maybe that candidate isn't somebody that represents where the party would organically be going. It's very clear, based on the popularity of someone who called himself a democratic socialist, and people were so excited. They were so excited for him. So obviously it's moving to the left, and if you're not moving to the left, you're going to keep losing on that side.
I hope they move as far left as possible, because 66 of the 99 state legislatures Republican, 34 of the governorships Republican. We control the House and the Senate and the American presidency. Keep moving to the left, as far left as you guys can go.
Yeah, that's working for you. Lisa, last word.
And being in the minority as well will likely embolden those most progressive, most leftward-leaning voices as well, like the Elizabeth Warrens, like the Bernie Sanders, who want to make noise in the minority. So I think that could help also push things further to the left.
Yeah, so what does 2020 look like? What were you saying?
2020?
Yeah.
Oh, baby, it's gonna be crazy. You thought 2016? Oh, baby, hunker down, because in 4 years it's gonna get a little nasty.
I gotta get you some lunch, because I think your tummy's growling. That's true. All right, we're outnumbered. Happy New Year. We'll be right back.